Welcome to the Unknown Chronicles, where the veil between reality and the mysterious is razor thin. Together we'll journey into the darkest recesses of the human experience, where truth twists into terror and shadows whisper secrets. Prepare yourself to face the unexplained, the unsettling, and the unspeakable. The unknown is waiting. Let's step into the darkness. Today, we have our next story coming from Mike of Washington, read by your host, Thorn Bloodrose. This story is called The Countdown. It started on a chilly November morning. I was driving home when I noticed a yard sale up ahead, tucked in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't the most extravagant sale, but something about it caught my eye. I pulled over and wandered through the mismatched furniture, old books, and other household items scattered across the lawn. I walked over to a table tucked close to the woman running the sale. A clock surrounded by knickknacks and other trinkets caught my attention. It was an antique, made of dark wood with intricate carvings of holly leaves and berries. The glass face gleamed as if it had just been polished, and there, at the bottom in bright green digital letters and numbers, was a countdown. 38 days until Christmas. I couldn't resist. Christmas had always been my favorite time of year, and the clock seemed like a perfect way to get into the spirit. I picked it up and turned to the woman running the sale. "How much for the clock?" I asked. Without even looking up from the old rocking chair she was sitting in, she replied, "Take it. It's been here far too long." I hesitated. It was a beautiful clock, but something about her dismissive tone made me feel uneasy. Still, I gave her a few dollars and took the clock home. I set it on my fireplace mantel, admiring the intricate details, smiling at how perfect it fit with the decorations around the house. That first night, as I washed dishes, I heard it, a faint ticking. I froze. The clock was digital. Why would it tick? I shook my head, convinced it was nothing. The next morning, when I checked the display, it had updated. 37 days until Christmas. It worked, just as it should. But as the days passed, the ticking grew louder, more persistent. It wasn't a soft noise anymore. It was almost like a second heartbeat, pulsing through the house. One night, while taking a closer look at the clock, I noticed something strange. The inside of the glass wasn't as smooth as it appeared. There were faint, tiny scratches, almost invisible at first. But when I leaned in, I realized they weren't just random marks. They were words. "Help me." My heart raced. I could feel my pulse in my throat as the ticking grew louder. Desperately, I grabbed my phone to call someone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. The house went cold, the lights flickering. The clock glowed brighter, its countdown continuing. I grabbed the clock, tossing it into the fireplace, watching it land in the flames. I held my breath, hoping, praying it would burn. For a moment, the fire seemed to catch the face of the clock, darkening as smoke curled around it. The ticking faltered, skipping a beat. Relief surged through me. But then the clock emitted a low, mechanical groan, the glow intensifying to a blinding white. The flames roared higher, the heat forcing me to stumble backwards. The countdown flared, its numbers warping and shifting. I could still hear the relentless ticking. No, not ticking anymore. A heartbeat. My heartbeat. The clock launched itself out of the fire unscathed, landed upright on the floor. The numbers on its face reset, starting the countdown over. I scrambled away, my back hitting the wall as I stared in horror. The room seemed to contract around me, the air thick and heavy. The whispers began, soft at first but growing more louder, insidious. They weren't just coming from the clock anymore, they were in my head, weaving through my thoughts. You can't run. The voice was gentle, almost soothing. The countdown has already begun. That's when I decided I had to get answers, to understand what was happening and why. I needed to get back to the woman. I returned to the yard sale, a mix of fear and anger gnawing at me. The house looked different this time, nearly abandoned. The tables were gone, the lawn bare, and there was a faded for sale sign in the front. I walked up to the house and I knocked on the door. The woman answered almost immediately. She looked just as I remembered, frail, with deep lines marking her face. But her eyes, they were different, like she was expecting me. I demanded, "What's going on with that clock? Why does it say help me inside?" She didn't flinch. Instead, her eyes narrowed. I had to get rid of it. She whispered, almost as if she was speaking to herself. I had to, otherwise. I had to give at least one to someone who willingly wanted it. And you willingly took it, willingly brought it into your house. I felt my stomach tightening. What do you mean? What is it? The woman stepped aside, motioning. If you really want to know, come in then. Reluctantly, I stepped into her dimly lit house. She led me to a back room where the air was thick dust and the smell of mildew. On a small table in the center of her room sat another clock, identical to the one I had taken. It ticked. She began to speak, her voice trembling. That clock was a gift. A gift from someone I thought I could trust. It was supposed to count down the days, yes, but it wasn't just any countdown. It was for a soul, for a spirit lost. The clock holds its essence. If it reaches Christmas Day, it claims its new victim. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? You mean it kills people? The woman nodded slowly. Not kills exactly. It takes them, traps their soul in the clock, but it's not immediate. The countdown makes the person, you, feel like it's harmless, that it's just another holiday decoration. It's a lie. That clock gets inside you, into your mind. She gently taps the side of her head. At first, you'll think it's nothing, just a faint hum in the back of your thoughts. But then it starts whispering. Memories, fears, hopes, all tangled together. It'll tell you things you want to hear, twist the truth so it feels comforting, until you can't tell where your thoughts end and the clock's begins. And the worst part. She paused, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You'll convince yourself it's your friend, that the countdown is something you want to reach. You'll crave it, count down with it, until the very last second. Her gaze flicked to the ornate clock on the table, its gilded hands ticking with a steady, deliberate rhythm. But when that last second strikes, there's nothing left of you, just a shell. And the clock, it moves on, looking for the next victim, leaving nothing but an empty husk behind. She shivered, hugging herself as if warding off a memory. You can't stop it. You can't smash it. Believe me, I've tried. The only thing you can do is get as far away as possible before it starts counting down. Because once it does, She trailed off, her eyes distant, haunted. Eurus gulped the clock on her table tick louder, almost deafening. I realized with horror that it had already counted down, just like mine. Before I could react, she grabbed my hand. You need to leave, now. I can't stop it once it has you. It was already counting down when you took it, but if it resets, when it resets, it claims you. There's no escape. I ran. When I got home, I was still shaking with fear. The clock was there, sitting on my mantel as if nothing had happened. But now, the numbers glowed a bright blood red. 1 day until Christmas. I had no choice but to leave. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. But then, I heard it. Knocking. Knock. Knock. I froze. I never opened the door. They found me days later, locked in my house. The clock sat on my mantel, its numbers now reset. 364 days until Christmas. The woman's warning echoed in my head. But the clock, it's waiting. And now I know I'm next. And so, dear listeners, the countdown begins again. Mike's story reminds us that the holidays, with all their cheer and light, can sometimes hide shadows we dare not face. The clock waits patiently, biding its time, as it always does. But let me leave you with one final thought. What if the ticking isn't just in Mike's story? What if you can hear it now, faint and distant, creeping into the quiet corners of your home? Maybe it's a clock, a decoration, or something you brought home and forgot about, something waiting for you to notice it. Listen closely. Can you hear it? Tick, tick, tick. The unknown is all around us, waiting to claim its next victim. Perhaps next time it'll be you. This has been the Unknown Chronicles, and I'm Thorn Bloodrose. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your wits sharp as we continue our journey into the depths of the unknown. Remember, the shadows are closer than you think. Merry nightmares, and sleep tight, if you can.